Go. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Lovecraft Easing podcast. I'm Mike Davis, and we're going to do some quick introductions. Les Klinger is our guest. Really great guy and always lovely to talk with. And he's got a new book out, which is extremely interesting. Hey, Les.
Thanks, Mike. Nice to be here.
I also want to say I really loved, it was brief, but seeing you at Necronomicon.
Yes, it was a great gathering.
Yeah.
It was good to be back together in person, live, so to speak.
Cisco was saying that to me over and over, when we were chatting. It's like, oh my God, it's nice to be among people who actually know what I do, So let's do introductions real quick. We'll make them fast because Les has another interview in an hour. So Bridget, hey.
Hello, I am Bridget. I do music and art things, and I'm the final girl here.
Yeah, where's Melissa?
That doesn't bode well for the show.
Yeah. Hey, Matt Carpenter, and then you can talk about our prize in an hour.
Hi there, I'm Matt. We're all here because none of us are at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival this weekend.
That's a good point.
Sadly true.
Kelly Young is, though, bastard.
So bring him next week to tell us about it.
That's a good idea. I mean, no, well, I'll give it some, yeah. Rick
Waywriter.
DeBronzo's here today. Mike DeBronzo.
Oh, Mike DeBronzo, artist, architect, pronounced Cthulhu Smith. That's it.
Okay. And then last but not least, Ben Handelman. Well, we haven't got to Pete yet. Sorry.
Oh, poor Pete. Ben Handelman, Les Klinger super fan.
Okay. Well, not last but not least, Ben Handelman. Last but not least, Pete Rawlick.
Pete Rawlick. I've done 8 loads of laundry today and still sorting. So yeah.
That's the mark of a real man right there.
Sorting laundry.
Yeah, exactly.
I sort laundry so the women in my life don't have to.
Les, thanks for being here. You've got a new book out, and you can probably introduce it a lot better than I can. You want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, it's called The New Annotated Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, published by Mysterious Press, comes out October 18th is the official pub date. I finally got to see a copy earlier this week. I apologize that it's not 900 pages like my last book, but it's really pretty. No credit to me. It's just beautiful because they did it. Lots of color, lots of lobby cards, movie posters, comic book covers, movie stills, and etc. As well as hundreds of footnotes. So,
yeah, you guys were kind enough to send us the PDF, and I noticed as I was going through there, even you're talking about a Batman comic with Two-Face and everything.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh, I love Les. This is great.
And let's not forget Mr. Hyde from Marvel Comics.
yes, he's in there too.
So
as well as the, 5 different Classics Illustrated versions or something like that. 5 different covers, I think.
5 different covers?
Well, there's 3. I think there's 3 different writers, and 2 of them had different covers.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So it's been adapted a lot. There's also somebody said you have your usual appendices. Yes. There are appendices of sort of pretty complete bibliographies of Jekyll and Hyde in graphic form, Jekyll and Hyde on the stage, Jekyll and Hyde on the screen, as well as the text. I mean, what's unique about this edition is that I tried to collate the texts. There are 3 distinct texts for Jekyll and Hyde. There is a very large but fragmented, very large chunk of the original manuscript. We'll get to whether it's not the original manuscript, but a manuscript. There is a large chunk of what's known as the printer's copy, that was sort of galleys marked up by Stevenson. And then there's the published version. And in the notes, I show all of the changes between the text, and there are some significant ones. There was a whole character sort of cut out, and anyway, I like to do that, so that's in there too.
That's awesome. It's a beautiful book. I showed the cover.
Introduction by Joe Hill.
Yes.
Loves the book and is a friend, and a long forward by me about Stevenson's history and the critical reception of the book, and so on. So, and it's still only 131 pages.
You couldn't crack that 900, huh?
I couldn't. It's just the story's too short. I could, if I'd included a few other things. I mean, that's what people do when they want bigger books. They sort of cheat and say, "Oh, well, let's put some more Stevenson in here." Could have thrown in Markheim, things like that. So
The Body Snatchers sometimes gets thrown in.
right, the Body Snatchers, Markheim, few other things that are sort of related. The whole poem he wrote to his friend, etc.
Well, Rick, you're in charge.
Okay. Now, one thing that we've got to talk about in Jekyll and Hyde, for those who've never read it, it's structured very differently than you expect. It's actually a mystery.
Billed as a mystery where the solution is more shocking than the crime.
Yeah, I believe that was G.K. Chesterton who said that.
Yeah, it is a mystery, and it's set up in sort of classical mystery format. I mean, again, like many of the things that I've written about, like Dracula, like Frankenstein, and certainly like Lovecraft, the public impression of the work is very different from the actual work. The films and the plays, none of them have done justice or been true to the original story. This is structured as a mystery. Our detective is a lawyer named Utterson, who's presented with a mystery, a little mystery to begin with, a very strange will, and then a murder, and sets out to solve it.
And it isn't two-thirds through the novel you discover that Jekyll is Hyde.
Yes, this shocking thing that Chesterton said, the great shock is not that someone is two different people. The great shock is that the two people are the same person.
Yeah.
A subtle distinction. It's an interesting book. I mean, Stevenson called it a story about that old war of the members, by which he means the body parts, I think, the struggle to be someone more than just simply someone driven by lusts and passions, and reconciling different parts of one's personality. This was very much a product of the Victorian period. Stevenson himself, I think, felt like a terrible hypocrite, because he was supposed to be leading a respectable life. His father wanted him to be an architect of lighthouses, but he wanted to be an artist, and he felt that he was living this double life. And so I think in that narrow sense, this was somewhat autobiographical. This book is very much about Victorian hypocrisy, the veneer of respectability, covering over a lot of sins. It's not clear here. It's very interesting to read the book. There's a lot of ambiguity in it. And it's interesting to speculate on what was Dr. Jekyll's dark side. What were his sins? We don't really know all the bad things that Hyde gets up to. We don't know what Jekyll has in his past. A lot of critics think it was homosexual escapades. Some have suggested it was merely dalliances with prostitutes. But in any event, it's clear that at this stage of his life, he thinks of that as sort of behind him, but he's still atoning for it with good works.
Yeah, in most movie versions, they make him a goody two-shoes who's creating this formula to create the perfect good human being, and that's not how it is in the book.
Not at all. Not at all. It's a flawed human being who makes the terrible decision to try and suppress one part of his personality, with the result that Hyde is that part of Jekyll that he despises, that is violent and vile.
I just want to jump in real quick and say it's an important distinction. I mean, important thing to say, and you said it very well in the preface, what kind of story this is. It's not the kind of story most of the public thinks it is today. And it's the same thing with Dracula. There was a reason
And
why it was so
Frankenstein.
scary. Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, both of them. And I mean, part of the reason is the stage. Jekyll and Hyde was adapted to the stage very quickly. I mean, within months of its publication. And of course, like any film or stage dramatization, it simplified the story and sort of emphasized certain elements over others. And so that became the popular view of the story. It was distorted. But the other part of it is that, I mean, just like Frankenstein, same thing happened with Frankenstein. It was immediately on the stage. And the title of the play gives away that point of view. The title of the original play of Frankenstein was called Presumption. That's what it was all about. It was, don't mess with science. God didn't mean us to know how to do these things. And that's not at all the story of Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde is not a story about science gone wrong. It's not about a good man, who takes one too many drugs. It's about someone who makes some bad choices in trying to be better. He decides to sort of split off and get rid of, I think, the bad parts of himself. And it doesn't work.
Rick?
I think it's sort of like he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. He doesn't.
Yes, because as Hyde, he can do is the perfect alibi.
Yeah.
If Hyde gets into trouble, he just disappears. Literally disappears. He doesn't exist anywhere in the world. It's not in hiding, excuse the pun. He's literally gone. And that we see that Hyde revels in that freedom, being able to do anything bad he wants, and then just be gone. An alternate universe or whatever. I mean, it's the only other choice. But
He's also younger when he becomes Hyde.
yes.
And shorter.
And shorter. Because Jekyll has some strange explanation about that the evil parts of his personality haven't had as much time to develop. And so they're younger and stronger or shorter, more compact. It seems a little strange, but this idea was exploited in the early stage productions and the films, where we see in the most amazing performances the transformation of Jekyll into Hyde without any makeup. So we see Barrymore is the perfect example of that. If you haven't seen the John Barrymore film of this, the 1920 Barrymore, it's on YouTube and it's absolutely worth watching. It's just astonishing to see him transform into Hyde.
I saw that for the first time, just before I read your annotated.
It's great. It's my favorite of all the films, just because it is a silent, but the performance is so powerful. But none of them, as you said, Rick, none of them really follow the book. They all have their own versions. It's mostly there's this good person who's been injured by science. There's always a woman, by the way. Very interesting, by the way, in looking at Jekyll and Hyde, that there are essentially no female characters. There's one very minor character who's a woman. This is a bunch of guys, thereby, again, sort of supporting the homosexuality theme. You've got Dr. Lanyon, you've got Dr. Jekyll, you've got Utterson, you've got the butler, you've got Utterson's friend, whose name I've forgotten.
Enfield, Richard Enfield.
Yes, and thank you for reading the book, Peter. You know, it's like I wrote this 2 years ago. You know, it's like I'm struggling to remember it now.
I just finished. I just submitted a story about Richard Enfield, so he's
Okay.
already on my mind.
Great. So it's all guys, and they're all sort of a clubby gentlemen, and there's no women. So, but every film has a romantic interest in it. Jekyll's girlfriend. By the way, we've been saying Jekyll. Stevenson would not approve. He said it should be pronounced Jekyll.
Jekyll.
Really?
Yes, it's an old Scottish name, he said.
Wow. The things you learn on this show.
There you go.
And some movies give them both a fiance and a girlfriend.
Yes, well, that's both the
Right.
Frederick March and the Spencer Tracy one, where he, as Hyde, has a mistress whom he abuses, and of course a true love who is the victim of him having had a mistress. You know, so therefore, she's the one he's cheating on.
In those movie versions, the motive is sort of he wants to get married, and his future father-in-law won't let him get married early. So basically, he's horny, and that's why he takes the formula.
Well, that's right. In the it's the Frederick March version, I think, where the father-in-law, the soon-to-be father-in-law, basically says to him, "Let's go sow some wild oats. You need to get this out of your system before you marry my daughter." He's kind of made into a villain, and so sure enough, Hyde kills him. He's the murder victim in that version.
Yeah, Barrymore version did that too.
There's such wonderful actors that have been in these over the years. Ingrid Bergman is just wonderful in the Spencer Tracy version as the mistress.
And the Frederick March version was suppressed for a long while because they didn't want it to compete with the Spencer Tracy version when it came out.
Right.
So I used to trade monster cards. We had that picture of Hyde, Frederick March with his great makeup job.
Yeah.
I couldn't find this movie anywhere. It was like I was in my 30s, I think, when I saw it.
Right, and that's the Mamoulian film, which the critics loved, but it didn't get screened. I mean, I've forgotten who bought what, but the studio that bought the rights basically quickly suppressed the distribution of that version because they wanted the Spencer Tracy version out there.
Also, Frederick March won an Oscar for that. So that was the first movie monster to win an Oscar.
Yes. So there's a long history of this adaptation, and frankly, it's one of the reasons that Jekyll and Hyde interested me. Several people have asked me, why did I pick this book to spend some time on? And first of all, it was obvious. I mean, if you do Dracula and Frankenstein, you're going to do Jekyll and Hyde. And it's sort of the third of the trio of iconic Victorian horror. But part of the reason that I was fascinated by the book was its immortality, if you will. The fact that today we're still seeing versions of this story being told, retold, reshaped. For example, I'm working on a podcast right now called Strange Case, which is a completely different take on the original story. I'm not writing it. I'm one of a group of writers working on it. And that fascinates me, that these stories have this kind of long life. mean, how many times has Sherlock Holmes been remade? I lost count, 250, 300 films. And the same with Frankenstein and the same with Dracula. So part of what interests me always about these books is their plasticity, is the ability of creators to take these stories and reshape them to make them different. I started to say more relevant, but that's a judgment. That's what the writer thinks.
The murder in the book is of a guy named Sir Danvers Carew, and we never find out exactly why that murder was done. They may have been gay lovers, they may have been something else.
That's right. We never know in the book. As I said, in the Frederick March version, Sir Danvers is Jekyll's girlfriend's father.
And I've always, somebody can write a pastiche and give it any motive for that murder.
There you go. Well, Pete, you're working on Richard Enfield. Does he meet Sir Danvers?
No. It's actually, so Kim Newman, who is one of my favorite people, has long postulated some relationship between Renfield and Enfield. And
makes good sense to me.
Yeah. So I've taken it upon myself to solve that.
Flesh that out, so to speak.
Yes. To solve that
Pete's good at
particular
that.
relationship.
Kim
I
has
have
a wonderful imagination.
I have a quintessential Mike Davis question about this. As you know, everything boils down to Batman. So
So Two-Face, right?
well, it's in the let's put it in
It's
the
in
book.
the book. That's
This
right.
is
There,
one of
there
the
are
reasons
covers
why
in
I
there.
love Les Klinger so much is he does cool things like this.
I'm a geek. We all know that. So
We're all geeks.
yes. Well, it's just inevitable. I mean, we're not going to talk today about Batman and Sherlock Holmes, but so Batman, yes, Two-Face is in many ways drawn from Jekyll and Hyde, and there is a series. I think it's 6 issues. That's about literally the story of Jekyll and Hyde and Batman, and the covers are so beautiful. I wanted them in the book. Let me see if I can find one of the covers.
Yeah, you've got it in there, but I don't remember the title, and yeah, I made a note to look it up.
I'll see if I can.
I haven't read it, so.
So
amazing.
we've mentioned Two-Face, and Rick mentioned Mr. Hyde from Marvel earlier, but the Incredible Hulk as well
Oh, yeah.
is inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, Stan Lee always mentions it in interviews.
Yeah.
I think there was a movie poster actually of the Spencer Tracy version. We had Jekyll and Hyde as a Two-Face, and that may have inspired creation of the character in Batman.
So while we're
Here's this one. Let me share the screen and if I can do this.
Let me give everybody
Disabled it. Yes.
who can share, all participants. There we go. You should be able to do it now, Les.
How's that one?
Oh yes.
oh yeah,
The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
But that's made in 1960 or thereabouts.
Find some more here. I'm trying to find the comic book one here, the Batman one. Here it is.
I am too.
You see that?
No, still see the first one.
Use a different screen share. Then. me figure out how to do this.
While he's doing that, I'll just mention an interesting trivia fact. Most of you are probably aware that there are two versions of Jekyll and Hyde. Now that's Batman.
Oh God, that's great. I didn't even know that existed. Thanks, Les.
Well,
Sure.
okay, I'm going to give you a little trivia fact. There were actually, well, most people think there were only two versions by Hammer of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There's the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, which is a handsome Hyde, and a bearded Jekyll. And then there's Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde,
Yes, one of my favorites.
in which Hyde becomes a woman. Well, there was in 1959 a comedy called The Ugly Duckling, which was about a descendant of Jekyll, who becomes a comedic version of Mr. Hyde. So there are actually three versions. The other one is always forgotten, deservedly so. It's a horrible comedy.
Just to end the Batman thread real quickly, for those who are listening and didn't see the screen, it's called Batman Jekyll and Hyde. I believe I read it's from 2005, 2006.
Six issues. It's mentioned in the bibliography. If you can't find the reference, buy my book and then you'll find it in the bibliography. So
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Go on, Rick.
Well, just to talk about some movie adaptations. The way to, if you're going to do a faithful adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde, the only way to do it is to change the names of the characters so people don't know who they are and surprise them and just realize, oh, I've been watching an adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde, not realizing it. There have been two efforts that do it. The one that's probably better known to the people here is one called I, Monster, which came out in 1971, I believe, which had Christopher Lee as a version of Jekyll and Hyde. Peter Cushing, I think he may actually even call Utterson. I think they changed everybody. They kept everybody's name from the story except Jekyll and Hyde, because and structured it sort of like the book. But there was a French version in 1959 on French television, directed by John Renoir, who directed Grand Illusion, among many famous movies. And in that one, it was set in modern times, but it was called The Testament of Dr. Cornelier, which is spelled Cordelier. If you want to look it up, you can get a review of it by Sam Hamm on Trailers from Hell on YouTube.
Sam Hamm? Oh, we had him on the show a few weeks ago.
I remember that.
Basically-
Patreon podcast, yeah.
Yeah, basically it's
Nice.
it was done in modern France, and it's Jekyll and Hyde was different names. So you would be surprised watching it that it turned out to be a Jekyll and Hyde story.
Now, were you just busy looking for covers, Les, or were you like you hadn't heard about this yet? Yeah.
These are ones where I had no idea that all of these existed.
The eye monster and everything. So
Yeah.
this is why Rick is in charge of interviewing you today.
Well, that's one thing that most people, the opening of Jekyll and Hyde, maybe we should talk about, in which he abuses a child.
No.
That's different from what I expected when I first read the novel. It's this first crime that gets him into trouble.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that, Les?
Sorry, what was, I'm so busy.
Too
looking
busy
at
putting
the
opening covers up.
Jekyll and Hyde with the child being stepped on by Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
It's not, I think in your footnotes you indicate that maybe that was a reference to child prostitution or something.
Yes, which was, of course, a great scandal of the day. Some of you have undoubtedly read Anthony Horowitz's The House of Silk, and the first authorized Sherlock Holmes pastiche. And in my review of it, I said, couldn't you have picked, a sort of less obvious mystery than oh my goodness, it turns out to be about child prostitution. It was headlines in the Times of London for weeks as W.T. Stead was trying to expose the terrible child prostitution rings and bring them down.
If you are, most of my listenership is on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, so that folks can listen on the go. Quite understandable, but you might want to revisit this one on YouTube because we've got a lot of props and images that Les has given us.
So one of the wonderful things about this book is in what Leslie is showing us right now is all the art that he's scoured and put into the book as references. And one of the things that I seem to have been remiss in discovering were the Beeman illustrations.
Yes, there's been bunches of different illustrators, sort of early editions. Let's see if I can.
The ones
This isn't one of them.
Right. The ones by Beeman are particularly expressionists, done in expressionist style that gives it sort of a Cabinet of Dr. Caligari feel to it, which was really a surprising interpretation for me. I'd never thought of it in that manner, but the artwork really directs your mind to in that interpretation. If you have one.
Yeah, I do. Let me put up some of the Beemans here. Hold on a second.
Particularly the one with the houses and the lights.
Right. Get it to open.
So what I'm getting out of all of this is that Sean Connery's movie, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, that interpretation of Hyde was way off. Did you see that?
Yes,
that was terrible.
Mr. Hyde and movies.
He was a huge monster.
They made him the Hulk.
Yeah.
The comic book version, Alan Moore actually did have like a reasonably decent explanation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the way he portrayed Hyde was maybe a little difficult to stomach, if you will. He wasn't exactly following the Victorian trend of kind of hiding what Hyde may do.
There's a lot of strange things going on in the original novel. Like when he murders this guy named Danvers Carew, who's a member of Parliament. He murders Danvers Carew when he's going to post a letter at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, let's post a letter. Yeah. Sure.
What the heck is he doing?
What are you showing here?
But that's he's actually carrying a letter and says hello to, he passes by Mr. Hyde, says hello to him, and then Hyde beats the heck out of him with his cane.
So this is one of the Beeman illustrations.
Right.
And let's see, these are more.
That's
There's
the one
Hyde.
that really captures the kind of expressionism and reminds me of Captain Caligari, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yeah.
I mean, that image right there could be out of, Nosferatu, let alone Jekyll and Hyde, right? With the huge shadow.
These are
Transformation.
so great.
Yeah. And these were used in the 1980 Franklin Library edition, as they come out much earlier, I think 1930, but then they're reused in the 1980 Franklin Library edition.
Yeah.
Such
Those
great
are
work.
Really great.
There are so many great ones. I mean, you go back to the Macaulay illustrations. This is, let me see who this is. These are the, let's see, we've done the Beemans. There's the Beemans in here. I'm not sure who that one is, but let's go back to the early Macaulay woodcuts and see those. I can get there. again. I'm sorry, this is,
No,
I gotta-
that's,
okay, there we go.
oh, wow.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
I like the Beeman style quite a lot. I've always liked that particular, Caligari style, if you will. While he's showing these covers, Rick, you have some more questions? Or anyone?
Actually, go ahead. What should I do?
Oh, you go, Pete, go.
So one of the things I really appreciated in reading your annotations is that in some occasions you went and found, like, when you try to define sawbones, you went and found a contemporary definition of sawbones from some other author and put that in.
Well, that's part of the pleasure of doing this stuff, Pete. It's that I have so many Victorian reference books, whether it's my 1888 Britannica or my 1910 Britannica, or travel guides, all kinds of Baedekers and medical dictionaries and so on. I love using that stuff. I mean,
Right.
I especially like the 1888 Britannica. I used it a lot when I did the annotated Sherlock Holmes, because I wanted to sort of be able to talk about what did Holmes know, what did everybody know, what was sort of the public knowledge of things at the time. So yes, I do try and find those kinds of sources. Let me flip over here. These are more later.
You mentioned the Baedekers, and I recently ran into a small collection of those for London and Berlin and Paris. And there were some interesting gaps in the dates. And I'd always thought of Baedekers as British, but they're actually German.
Yes.
And the gaps in the dates correspond to the war. And when Baedekers they weren't allowed to collect intelligence for places that Germany was probably going to try and invade.
Rick?
We think travel guides as just travel guides, but back then they were also potential sources of intelligence.
Also,
like-
this
No,
to bring in a little interesting Lovecraft connection. The encyclopedia, the edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica that Leslie mentioned was owned by Lovecraft. And when I was doing research on the sources of the King in Yellow and the Necronomicon, I used that a lot to discover what Lovecraft knew about certain things in Arabia and so forth.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, yes, I looked at it when I did in my second annotated Lovecraft volume, where I annotated Under the Pyramids. He clearly he certainly hadn't gone to Egypt, and he got them from he got the descriptions from the Baedekers for Egypt, of all these places, the hotels and the tomb, etc. So I included a lot of it. I mean, I always like to, as Pete said, I like to put in references to contemporary material.
All right, Matthew Carpenter just wrote in the text that only we can see. See, right before you came in, he was like, it looks great, but I just have so many books that, or then and then he just wrote, these illustrations are irresistible. I just ordered it.
Well,
So
if you
he
want,
turned them around 180 degrees, man.
you'll see there's a couple of pages in the book where I've actually showed similar the same scene being illustrated by different illustrators. But I also recommend, now it's too late for Matt Carpenter, the ebook, because in the ebook edition, you can actually blow up the images, and they're
Nice.
all very high res reproductions.
Well, I was going to
So-
say that it's a beautiful book and it's great to have on your shelf, but then also what you just said about the Kindle edition. The Kindle editions, of course, are searchable, so,
Well, I've always wanted both for my books, because I've always tried very hard to have super high res images,
Mhm.
so that in the ebooks you can, sort of blow them up to full screen. This problem of copyrights for images has always been a troublesome one.
Talked
But
about
most
that
of the
at
ones,
Necro.
I'm sorry.
We talked about that at Necro.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you were, well, you go on, you tell.
Well, no, I was saying that, so my solution has always been that you can use even copyrighted images, the comic book covers, etc., as long as it's fair use. I mean, I think there's pretty good evidence of that in the so-called Bill Graham Presents case. That was a case in which somebody was doing a history of San Francisco in the 60s and reproduced a number of the Fillmore posters. And the court ended up saying you couldn't really do a history of the era without showing those posters. And so it was found to be fair use because it was in a scholarly context. So here, if you're doing about Jekyll and Hyde and you're trying to show people the range of comic books, for example, you need to be able to reproduce images from the comics, at least a single image. I've always tried to be very careful in using images to make sure that it's in a scholarly context where the source is very carefully noted. It's not just stealing the picture, it's saying, this is the cover of such and such, drawn by so-and-so, published by so-and-so on such and such date. So that it's in that scholarly context. And this isn't a picture book.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that people look at those, as I did with the Batman one, and go, oh, I really want to buy this. It benefits the, the company or book or entity that you published whose images you used. Trying to
exactly.
say.
And to me, the test is simply this: nobody's going to not buy that issue because I showed them the cover.
Yes.
Nobody's not going to buy a book where I used one image from the book, or a movie where I used one still from the movie. It's sort of not destroying the commercial use, is kind of to me, a practical definition of fair use.
You can pre-order the book. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. It actually comes out in 9 days, so we're getting close.
Getting close.
And I'll say again, pre-orders always help writers and publishers, rather than waiting until it comes out. That's good too. I mean, hey, buy the book, right? But
yes,
pre-orders help more in the sense that they give the publisher a sense of how well the book is going to do, which I have no doubt this one do go like gangbusters. But the point is, pre-order the book if you think you're going to buy it anyway. So
yeah.
Rick, yeah.
Les, you've done Dracula, Frankenstein, Lovecraft, Dr. Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde. What are you going to do next? The Turn of the Screw, for example?
Well, we're debating. I have to say, it's these darn publishers, who seem to want to make money, and they don't understand the art, the passion. They want these books to be profitable. So this is a small press. It's Mysterious Press. It's my friend Otto Penzler. And he and I have talked about successive titles, but he also wants to see how this one does. All the more reason for pre-orders. So
right, exactly.
It was an expensive book to produce because of all the color. So we wanted to succeed. We've talked about The Invisible Man as a possible next title. I've been talking for a long time about wanting to do The Lodger, not a book well known, but gets you into all the Ripperology stuff. People have suggested to me that I do one of the Wilkie Collins books, The Moonstone or The Woman in White. There's so many. And as I say, the problem is trying to find a book that's got a built-in audience, where people go, oh yeah, I know that, I want that. And maybe they don't want it for the right reasons, but that's okay. They want it because they saw the Tom and Jerry cartoon and, they loved it. So,
But
You're
in
going for the
reading your
Universal
version, they
Monsters
learn
hat?
more.
Yes.
Pete, what?
You're going for the Universal Monsters hat trick.
well, that's probably, yeah, the problem is that there's not much, the Wolfman, there's no text. Everybody
Right.
says, oh, aren't you going to do werewolves next? It's like, well, there's no book.
No, there's not. And the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the book actually comes after the movie. So
Right. So what are you going to do? You're going to do The Werewolf of Paris?
Werewolf of
A great book.
yep. Phantom
But-
of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera. Yep. I've sort of done Phantom of the Opera. We did that. We did that as the first volume in the Haunted Library of Horror Classics,
Right.
which if you don't know that series, by the way, I should plug it. This is a set of trade paperbacks. There's 8 titles published by the Horror Writers Association in association with the Poison Pen Press. These are what I would describe as lightly annotated editions of some classics, including The House on the Borderlands, The Parasite and Other Tales by Arthur Conan Doyle, The King in Yellow, Vatek, The Beetle, Of One Blood by Pauline Hopkins, very early title. The Vampire by Jane Loudon.
You annotated The King in Yellow?
Yes.
Where can I find that?
If I can be excused for saying the word Amazon, yes.
Oh, I don't care.
Look for Haunted Library of Horror Classics, because again, there's
Okay.
lots of editions of some of these books.
So if I can
You'll find links on my webpage, by the way.
I
Okay.
nudge you in the direction of maybe the War of the Worlds?
I found it.
Well, I would love to do the
Love
War
that
of the
because
Worlds.
you could essay on how that started a whole flying saucer genre.
Absolutely. I would love to do the War of the Worlds. But Matt, the issue is, again, the publisher. So I pitched the War of the Worlds to Norton, and I said we could even include the radio script in the edition.
Oh, yes, please, please.
And I would annotate the radio script as well, which is very different. They said, we don't think it's got a huge market. I have suggested this to Penzler at Mysterious Press. It's not quite he doesn't really want to go down the science fiction road. Mysterious Press is sort of the occult is okay. Jekyll and Hyde is kind of right on the edge. The Invisible Man, I'm not sure why he thinks that works, but he does. But War of the Worlds, he said he didn't want to do that. So I'd have to find another publisher again. So
You can't get him drunk, take him out to dinner.
I've tried for
Okay.
many reasons. I've tried to do that, but we'll see. So, it's these darn publishers.
Yeah. It looks like, Les, I'm looking at the Amazon page, and it looks like you have to be careful. If you click over to other versions, then it's not the Haunted Library of Horror Classics. It's
Right.
You've got to get the $6.99 paperback. It looks like to me. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, it's more than that.
Is it?
No,
Uh,
I found the link on the Horror Writers Association page, and Mike will give it to you so you can put it in the show notes specifically for the Kindle and paperback versions that are correct.
Oh, thank you very much.
Let me
All
see
right,
if I don't
yes.
have a link myself. You can buy it from Poison Pen, but you can buy it from the source books.
Good job,
So-
Ben. Yeah, $3.78 on Kindle. I have to have this. Yeah.
And I do want to say for people that are listening or watching, LeslieKlinger.com. So all of Les's books are listed there.
LeslieSKlinger.com.
LeslieSklinger.com. And it includes, he has errata for the books that need it, for all the scholarly annotated stuff, including the Sherlock Holmes stuff. Less is
Including Jekyll and Hyde. I've already got 2 errors.
there you go. And there's definitely, like, if you're a fan of his annotated works, all of them are listed on there, right? With fancy blurbs from Stephen King and Joyce Carol Oates, who are big fans of his annotated Lovecraft stuff. So I'd highly recommend checking it out.
I will link to that. I will link directly to the books page, and then people can explore from there, Les, if that's all right.
That'd be great. Yeah, we haven't even talked about my annotated comics, but that's the whole other thing.
Oh, the annotated Sandman.
The annotated Sandman and the annotated and Watchmen annotated.
Rick, do you have any final questions?
I think I'm done.
I will ask one final question, and I didn't come up with this, but I think it's really interesting. Why was the 19th century so fascinated with monsters? Frankenstein's creature, Hyde, and Dracula.
Because of the surface of normality. I think the monsters represented, for writers, certainly the monsters were a way to bring outsiders to society and examine what was wrong with society. And so it's a literary trope in that sense, that it was a way to get to the social problems, was to talk about monsters. But I mean, we can talk about each one of the monsters is a separate set of reasons. Jekyll and Hyde was very much about hypocrisy, and so you have that kind of monster. Dracula is very much about outsiders invading our culture, whether it's those darn foreigners from the Far East or it's the Irish, whatever you like. And Frankenstein is very much about parenthood and what happens when you have a very unusual child, and you have sort of on the surface good reason to abandon the child.
See, this is why I want to make more money, not because I want a big house or anything like that. I'm looking at your site. I'm looking at, okay, the new annotated Sherlock Holmes volumes 1 and 2. I'm a huge Holmes fan. The Dracula one. I've got the Joshi Lovecraft annotated, but I've seen yours, and no offense to Joshi, but I like yours better.
Well, the plug for that is very simple. I mean, ST is a brilliant scholar. The problem that I have with his annotated books is he doesn't recognize that there's any other scholars in the universe. So whereas mine not only reference his scholarship, but lots of other great Lovecraft scholars.
I got lucky on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because Megan is sending me a hardcover. So
Great.
yes, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about American Gods.
Oh, talk about
Which is
built-in
also
audience, Les.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, well, that one was an easy one. I mean, when Neil called me up and said it's time for us to do this, I said, yes, sir.
You had Robert Downey. You're friends with Robert Downey Jr., right?
I guess we've worked together. Friendly.
Yeah.
We've worked together a couple of times, and we do email from time to time. Yes.
Yeah, he called you up when he did the Holmes movies.
Right.
Is that what happened?
Yes.
What was his reason? He just wanted he's a great actor. He wanted to do.
He likes to talk to experts. When he did Chaplin, he searched around the world and met with the leading experts on Chaplin and sort of dive into the character. It was easy when he found out that the quote leading expert in the world, which is not something I've ever claimed, lived a few miles away from him in Malibu. It was really easy. So,
he's like, "What's your address?" or "Where we're going to lunch?" or whatever.
Exactly. You know? He came over for lunch. And,
yeah,
and
that's great. You know, Chaplin, what a performance. You know, so.
But I don't know if I've told you, we don't really have the time. So Brad Pitt did the same. Brad Pitt was actually up to play Moriarty in the Game of Thrones, not Game of Thrones, in the Game of Shadows sequel.
Oh, really?
And,
I didn't know that.
So I had a similar conversation with him about playing part of Moriarty.
All right. Anything else? I know you have to go do your other interview.
I do. It's been great. I mean, whoever had the idea of the covers, that was a good idea, showing all those illustrations and things.
Yeah.
So thanks for that suggestion, Pete.
Thank you.
Always
so
a treat
much,
to be
Rose.
with you guys. It's great to be with people who are so knowledgeable about the subject matter, as opposed to the sort of classic television book interview. So, Leslie Klinger, tell us about your book.
Well, we've had you on the show several times before. Ben just texted me and said next time Les is on, it needs to be a minimum of 3 hours where he can just go on and talk about whatever he wants to talk about. And I'm like,
Oh,
I
that's
said
very
I find
kind.
it hard to argue with that. So
That's very kind. Well, we'll do Batman and Holmes. Absolutely.
you just said the magic words. All right, I'll let you go, Les. Just
Thanks, guys.
yeah.
Keep up the good work. Your show is fabulous. Long may it live.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Les. That means a lot.
Take
Talk to you
care.
soon, buddy.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Well, I was going to say a nice thing about him. Oh, now he's gone. He is always so wonderful to chat with. He's not only so knowledgeable, but just such a friendly guy.
I really don't think of him as a lawyer anymore, but he is, and he's
Yeah.
done some incredible law work, and we've never really talked about that.
Well, I don't
And-
think of my wife as a lawyer anymore. She's
Oh.
done incredible law work, but
We only talked about his involvement in the Holmes estate case.
Right.
Whether he had to
Right.
pay royalties to the Holmes estate if he wanted to use Holmes in the pastiche.
And we shouldn't understate how important that is for a lot of other related stuff, right? That can affect future Lovecraft productions or Robert E. Howard or anything, because they're in that kind of similar murky copyright status. So you're right. We don't talk about him as a lawyer a lot. So it is kind of funny when it comes up, but he said he is Neil Gaiman's lawyer, for example. Like he's done a lot of this stuff, literary work for years and years. So.
All right. Well, DeBronzo is here. I think I've talked him into becoming a semi-regular when he
It's
can.
important to be regular.
Yes, it is.
That's why I
Yes,
have
yes, it
Brand.
is.
Thank you for throwing that in, Matt. Now, Mike, let's just say something about Mike DeBronzo. He's a really great friend. He's really supported me, not just monetarily with the Patreon, but also as you guys do, with policing threads and being a moderator and things like that. And but I think and he's very knowledgeable, but I think the most important reason for him to be here is to give Pete Rollick shit as much as possible. So
Oh yes, this is true. This Mike is and to be absolutely honest, Mike I have not done a bad movie review, a live stream of a bad movie in a little bit of time.
yeah, it's time.
Very true.
It's time.
I've
But
been
I-
a little busy.
I just realized this
I-
dynamic. So Ben's on here to give you shit. So you had
Yes.
DeBronzo on to give Pete shit.
I know what I'm doing. Yep, that's right.
Let's just talk about your ears, Bridget, if we're going to keep it all around.
Let's talk about her ears.
Let's talk about how Matt almost got some ears this weekend.
No, let me just engage the screen share. Danielle and I were out picking up a few things yesterday. And there was this, for those who are listening only later, we found some headphones like Bridget's with the cat ears. And I talked to Danielle, I texted Bridget, and I'm like, we agreed that I should think about buying these and sending these to Matthew Carpenter and telling him that he's obligated to wear these every week. Do you have any thoughts on this, Matt?
I have many thoughts, and most of them I'm not able to vocalize. But I'm trying to figure out when Polaroid decided to switch to making headphones?
Well, when everybody
Legit
switched to
question.
digital cameras, that's why.
Well, I'm trying to figure out who at Polaroid said, you know what? What market needs us? What the market really needs is another pair of headphones, but with cat ears.
That
And
light up.
that light up. And this is going to be our moneymaker.
Oh, yeah.
That's the hook right there.
Yeah, that's
Just no.
Yeah.
Polaroid.
this is why people watch this show and listen to this show.
I think it's got Matt written all over it.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually,
Embrace it.
I'm just gonna buy a pair, write Matt all over them, and then send it to them.
So
Thank you, Pete.
now that Pete said that, I actually looked it up, and apparently Polaroid became famous for making polarized sunglasses and were known as the Apple of its time back in the 30s and 40s. So
Really?
apparently this is just a return to form for them, making a bunch of random electronic stuff and everything.
All right. Well, hey, here's a little announcement. Nadia Bolkin, who all of you are probably familiar with, writer, friend.
Red goat, black goat. Yep.
Sorry.
Red goat, black goat. One of her good stories.
She wrote a fantastic story in Autumn Cthulhu called "There Is a Bear in the Woods." I was just blown away.
What's Autumn Cthulhu?
I'll explain it later. It's edited by some guy, Mike Davis guy. I don't know who he is. And I'm about to send out invitations for Autumn Cthulhu too. So it'll happen in about a year. I'll do a Kickstarter and everything.
What?
What now?
We've
What?
been talking about it for years, Pete. You know, it's like
I
No,
told
no.
you it would take me a few years. I'm getting to it now. After I do yearbook, if that's what you're
No,
complaining about.
I'm just saying that I think I've sent you 3 stories for Autumn Cthulhu too.
And I'm
so. It's going to be a single author collection, Pete.
gonna read them. Yeah, I'm sure. I have no doubt that out of those 3 stories, there will be at least 3 that are good enough to get into the. So, but I want to give everybody else, like Laird and God damn, especially John Langan, plenty of time to write these stories. So before I
You know,
start
I've
the
thought about it, and
Kickstarter.
we give John Langan grief about missing deadlines and stuff. But like in the last 4 or 5 years, he's put out 3 or 4 single author collections. So it's not
Yeah.
like he isn't-
I give him grief because he doesn't really deserve it. He's amazing. He's a great writer. The Fisherman is a
actually more
classic.
prolific than you would think.
Oh, he's very prolific. Anyway, speaking of, back to Nadia Bolkin, she does these neat little reviews on her Twitter page, and she's going to be doing a little video movie review of 2 or 3 movies about every 3 to 4 episodes of the Lovecraft Using podcast. And what I'll do is I'll be tacking that at the end of the podcast, and hopefully it will have time to do that today. If I don't, it will be on next week's show, and I'm really excited about it. I've seen her first one, and look her up on, if you're not following her on Twitter, just look her up, Nadia Bolkin, on Twitter, and she frequently gives these little mini reviews of movies, and that's why I asked her, because they're always thoughtful little reviews. So real quick, I received an email from, if I can find it, probably not, Jason, I believe was his name. You'd think I could be a little bit better prepared. Well, I'm not going to waste everybody's time looking for it, but what he basically said was that he had been very depressed, and that over the course of a few weeks listening to the Lovecraft Easing podcast really helped him. I really appreciate that. And I've gotten notes like that before, and I really appreciate when I get them. I know what it's like to be deeply depressed, you know, lonely earlier in my life before I met Danielle. And we have a lot of fun on this show, and we also have great guests like Les Klinger. We learn a lot. We you know, we recommend a lot of books and movies, but at the same time, you know, Victor Lavelle said this too. He said, you know, I love the guests, but my favorite part is when you guys are just chatting. I feel like I'm at a bar talking with friends, even though, you know, I'm not physically with you guys or virtually with you guys. Few other comments. This podcast helped me get through lockdown. Love it. You know, so that kind of thing. I usually try to catch your show Sunday afternoons on YouTube. I've come to look at you guys as buddies. And one of my favorites from Adam Taylor, thanks for reminding me that reading is a joy. And this isn't just me, this is all of us. So if you're feeling that way, my point is, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're listening. I know what it's like, and we do consider you friends, even if we never get to meet you. Hopefully we do at a convention. Feel free to drop me a line if we've helped you in any small way. I'll share it with the panelists. Lovecrafteasing@gmail.com. Just lovecrafteasing@gmail.com. So what else we got here? We got a lot of stuff to talk about, fun stuff.
One last thing before-
yes.
We do have a prize today. Speaking
Yes,
of,
go ahead.
This is a just released anthology graphic novel, Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. I got 2 copies off a Kickstarter. I'm giving one away. Really nice art and stuff.
Is it
If you
good?
want- Yeah, well, it's entertaining. I've read a couple of the stories. Beautiful art. I think if you want to win a copy, you can just send a email to easingprizes@gmail.com and put Wonderland in the subject heading. I think I said Wonderland, or did I say Cthulhu? No, I don't remember. I'll figure it out.
Pete,
Draw the winner in about 6 weeks. You got time.
and yes, by the way, we've reorganized the podcast a little bit over the last few weeks. I think the listeners have noticed. The audio editions, with very few exceptions, will be up Mondays. In other words, the very next day. So, and I've been doing that. Pete, how the hell are you?
I'm awesome. I'm busy and I'm happy.
You like being busy though.
I do like being busy. It keeps me out of trouble.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
Last weekend, we drove up and we went to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal. And I highly recommend that everybody, it's Halloween season, everybody's got a local haunt.
Yes, happy October.
Go to your local haunt and see what essentially is, you know, local live performance horror theater. And if you like it, get involved, you know, if you have the time. I find it fascinating. And I posted my review of Universal, and ultimately I think the problem with most haunts is that it's a 15-second interaction with each scene. So it's the best way you can get a reaction is a jump scare. But there are some people who are doing a really good job at going beyond that. And there were a couple interesting scenes in some of the haunts at Universal. The Weekend, this is it's from the mind of the Weekend, the rock star an after hours nightmare. And there's some interesting imagery in that was really disturbing. The problem with the other problem I have with jump scares is that, you know, as a writer and a fan of horror, I pretty much know where they're going to come from. If there's a big gaping hole in the wall, that's where it's coming from.
Have you watched The Midnight Club yet?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got a article here on Bloody Disgusting, and here is the title. Netflix's The Midnight Club sets Guinness world record for jump scares in a single episode.
Yeah.
Now I have to watch it. I wasn't going to. So you have watched it? What did you
yeah,
think
it's
of the jump
enjoyable. It's got a lot of jump scares in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
According to the article, yes. So
It's definitely focused on a teen audience. I've also watched Hellraiser and Werewolf by Night.
we're going to talk about both of those. Yeah, in just a few minutes. Were you done with that train of thought about the
Sure, I can be done
performance?
with that train of thought.
Okay, watched again Something Wicked This Way Comes with Mom the other night. The criminal thing about this movie is that it's not on streaming. You have to watch it on DVD. All right, so whatever, but it is every bit as magical as I remembered. It's been a few years, and that scene, I want, if you go to my YouTube channel, you scroll down to clips, I think it is, I put a bit of the scene in the library where Jason Robards begins with, I know who you are. You are the autumn people. Where do you come from? The dust. Where do you go to? The grave. And Jonathan Hyde is like, yes, we are the hungry ones. And, you know, of course, as wonderful as the movie is, there's so much more in the book and such great writing in the book. So I think I've pushed a few people into reading the book for the first time this year, and it makes me really happy.
You know, quintessentially, the John Carpenter's Halloween is used as a, hey, this is the film for, you know, Halloween revivals. You know, if you're going to do a movie theater rerun of some classic horror film, let's use John Carpenter's Halloween. But there's absolutely no reason that you couldn't use Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Absolutely.
And get more of a family audience.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I know that you love that one. The one that I love that's a little harder, the rape is The Electric Grandmother.
The Electric Grandmother. I don't think I've even heard of this, Pete.
Am I getting the title wrong? Is Ben still here?
I decided it was time to move out of the house.
What the hell was that?
Sorry, that's me.
Was that your
Okay,
wife?
so I'm now freaked out.
Was
No,
that
no,
your
it's
wife,
like,
Matt?
No. I was going over the chat on the easing chat thing, and someone was saying something about Wednesday Addams. And I don't know if you ever all saw the adult version of Wednesday Addams.
Yeah,
So I was looking that up. It's a funny series that got copyright struck for a number of years.
Yeah, it looks like Wednesday looks like a great project.
Anyway, The Electric Grandmother is an adaptation of a Ray Bradbury story about a couple of young kids whose parents buy them a robot that looks like a grandmother, and it takes care of them as children. And then when they become teenagers, they no longer need it, so they basically, you know, put it away into storage.
That called I Sing the Body Electric.
Okay.
How's that
Yes,
a
that's the
Halloween
story.
movie?
No, it's a Ray Bradbury story.
Oh, okay. All right.
But then when they become old and infirm, she comes back to take care of them again.
When you become old and gray, take down this book.
I think they adapted that in the Twilight Zone.
It was actually
Yeah,
originally written for the Twilight Zone. It was like he
Yeah.
wrote it as an episode, and then they made it into the movie Pete's talking about.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to find, or at least last time I looked for it, it was hard to find.
I have a public service announcement. Now,
Drugs are bad.
yes, that too. Well, let's not go too far on that. But so Hocus Pocus 2 just came out. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. I have not.
We are still trying to get a family unit together to watch it.
Same.
All right. Well, I have to warn everybody. Here's a headline. The headline reads, Texas mom warns Hocus Pocus 2 will unleash hell on your kids. You know, not Hellraiser, but Hocus Pocus 2.
I heard about this. A friend of mine posted on Facebook, marked safe from Hocus Pocus 2, casting real spells. And
I love that. A Texas mom has gone viral on social media for warning parents that watching the new Hocus Pocus 2 film could open the gates of hell into their families. Jamie Cooch from Troy near Waco shared her thoughts about the new movie on Facebook, saying it harvests the purity of children's souls so that witches may live on. I won't bore you with the rest of the comments, but I will say that she has removed her original Facebook post. So
who
anyway,
are these witches that are gonna be living forever?
yeah, I don't know.
How do we join
Is
them?
it Bette Midler?
I sign
Yeah.
up.
How do I get in on this? You know, I
Who's
wanna live
gaining in
forever.
this situation?
Sounds like the
And
plot of
witches?
Angelica Houston, the witches.
Yeah.
I'd be a witch if I could live forever as a bog witch or something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to warn everybody, that's what we're here for. I have not seen Hellraiser. I do not like body horror, but I heard if you're into that, this is a very good movie. Guys, spoiler-free thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I like the first two a lot. The third one, I kind of not really, and everything after that, no. But this one, I think it's Kelly actually put it. It's the third best Hellraiser. I like what they did with it. It's different, but it's set in. I think a lot of people think it's a reboot, but from what I've read from the director who did The Ritual, was that this is in that universe. So, which I thought was interesting. And it takes a different approach to, whereas more sexual in the first two, desires and stuff, frank. This one has more to do with addiction. So and the Cenobite designs are pretty good. Different. While
So
still paying
this is on
respect to-
Hulu, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
worth
I- and I
a
will-
watch.
I will echo that. I think that they did an interesting reinterpretation of Cenobite design.
Yeah.
The Cenobites are pretty much mostly naked. Whatever clothing they have is really skin, just folded in interesting ways.
Yeah.
They move very ethereally. I mean, they move almost like dolls. The design and production values are good. I think the acting is pretty good. The storyline is pretty good. The reinterpretation of the various configurations is an interesting evolvement. If this is set in the old universe, then this is a new interpretation.
Yeah.
I like the mansion designs with the skylight.
So you guys are giving it a thumbs up, basically.
I would have to agree that this is in the top. This is in the top 3 Hellraiser movies.
Yeah.
Now, that's easy to do because everything from 4 on was shitty.
How many Hellraiser movies are there?
Too many.
9.
9?
I think there are 10 actually. This was the 10th.
Yeah.
They
Um,
kept doing them because it's like any other movie. You have the rights, I think. You have to produce a movie to keep them after
Yep.
so long. So that's why you get Howling 20.
So
So-
watch 1, 2, and then this one is what you're saying. If
I will say, I thought 6 was pretty good. It's got Dean Winters, and it's very different. It's kind of like a surreal detective story. I think it's worth watching. It doesn't make a very good Hellraiser film, but it's kind of a fun horror film.
Is that the one where they wind up in space and they go
No,
through the
that's
history of
4.
the? Okay,
6
I get confused.
Yeah, so 6 is I mean, just look it up. It's the one with Dean Winters, right? He's kind of hard to miss. It's almost like a self-contained sequel to the first 3 that completely ignores everything else. But I'd say that one's actually worth watching. But yeah,
sort of
most
like
the-
everything after Terminator 2 is a sequel to Terminator 2.
No, more of it's just doesn't talk about, because like all the sequels after the 4th one are just kind of random one-off movies that have Cenobites and the puzzle box in them. So for example, like the last one with Doug Bradley, it was like a creator of like an MMO who's like hosting like a house party, but like there's like a virtual reality video game with and then the Cenobites are fake, but then they're not. And you can see like they're just making random Hellraiser movies using the character designs and kind of shoving them into unrelated scripts.
Yeah.
So if you want to see how all that came about, there's a great series on Shudder called Behind the Monsters. And there's a whole episode on Hellraiser and Pinhead
Ooh, nice.
where Doug Bradley is on there, as well as, directors, producers, etc. So they talk about the thought processes that were behind those different films. So it's well worth
That's
a
good
watch.
to know. Thank you.
And each episode is also on a different when we say monsters, they're actually not really talking about the classic monsters. There's a whole episode on Jason. There's a whole episode on Mike Myers. There's a whole episode on Candyman, which Pete, you would love that episode. It was incredible. But yeah, highly recommend that series. I think it's only 6 episodes. Each one is totally worth it. But they also talk about in the Pinhead episode about the Cenobite costume design. The costume designer who designed for the original movie talks about how she came up with those ideas, and it's just wonderful.
That's good to know. What's
Yeah.
the title of that again?
Behind the Monsters. It's a documentary on Shudder.
And it includes Candyman.
There's an episode on Candyman.
So Candyman.
So
Okay,
as an aside,
so
It's a series called Behind the Monsters, and then each episode focuses on a different monster.
okay, I just wanted
Yeah,
to make sure
yeah.
it was Candyman.
Yeah, there's an episode on Candyman, episode on Pinhead, episode on Jason,
No
Mike
one gets
Myers,
my humor.
yeah,
Freddy Krueger.
I just said it 3 times.
yeah, we got it. We just tried to ignore it because
You know what? You sound exactly like my son. Yeah, I heard the joke, Dad. It just wasn't funny.
You were making a joke, Mike. Okay, I can write jokes for you.
That's okay. Let's talk about Werewolf by Night, which I have not seen, but it's got a 92% Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
I just ditched Disney, and now this is the only way I can watch this movie.
And
It's fun.
it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
It is a nice family friendly, horror film.
All
just-
right.
And
It's
calling
only
it a film's a bit much.
family
It's like
because-
it's only
only
like
family-
55 minutes.
yeah.
Mm.
So
Okay.
if you don't have a lot of time, it's like a TV show episode. It's really well done. It's easily the best thing Marvel has put on Disney Plus. Like I wouldn't even compare it to anything else. It was really great. You don't need to see any other Marvel stuff at all to watch it. It's very properly self-contained, really good. The effects are great. The acting's great.
So it's better than Endgame. Is that what you're saying?
I would say it's better than Endgame, yes, but
Wow.
people probably disagree with me there.
Sort
It
of-
just
Go on, Mike.
I was just gonna say it doesn't overstay its welcome. Like that 55 minutes, it doesn't need to be longer. It gets in, tells its story, and yeah, that's all I was gonna say. And it
Yeah.
does.
I'm going to show that
you've
for
seen the-
movie night one week.
That would be a good choice.
But I
There's a
have to
certain
add a couple other short movies.
Yeah, there's if you've seen the promo material, you know that there's certain swamp creature that pops up for a second, and they really did that well. And
The other
they
thing-
gave, is it the spoiler to say who it is?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay,
It's when he shows up, it's a surprise.
okay.
It was in the trailer.
Yeah,
He's there for
But it-
like a second.
Now, it's family friendly because it's in black and white. If you
Yeah,
did this in color, there would have been blood all over the place.
yeah, they
This
do
is
take advantage
true.
of that. The other thing I love, so the director is, he actually is the composer on a ton of the Marvel films. And I'll butcher pronouncing his name. It's like Michael
Giacchino?
Giacchino. He does, I mean, he does a really fantastic job. So
And
I
he
think-
composed for this too, right?
he did compose for this. He also composed, I think it was like Endgame and the Doctor Strange movie. He composed all 3 of the Marvel Spider-Man films.
He's awesome.
He's incredibly prolific. He composed for the 3 J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. He's a really talented composer. So seeing him kind of transition into this world, it was pretty great. There's also a great guest star by a certain punk from a bus in Star Trek 4. So if nothing else, you should
Oh,
watch it.
shit.
He's great in it. So I said, this is really, the other thing they do that I love is it's not that there's no CG usage, but for the werewolf in the title, it's like actual like makeup effects and stuff. And so it doesn't look like a PlayStation 2 game for those who may not be fans of all of the other Marvel TV shows with their low CG budgets. So as I said, I'd check it out. It's great.
So
I love how that was filmed, Ben,
Mhm.
with the silhouettes.
Yeah.
Really well done.
So to use your segue about Star Trek, we all saw the Picard trailer. I loved it.
Yeah, I
So-
love it.
This
And-
one, I find it hard to talk about without spoiling the trailer.
Oh,
So I don't
yeah.
know.
All I can say is that I don't know who the woman is with the anger issues. And I don't know, I mean, and
That's my
I'm
wife. Yeah.
I'm
She's played by
extremely
Amanda Plummer.
I'm beyond extremely happy about the final reveal.
I was actually more excited about the second to last reveal of
I
like
agree
the
with
other
you on
villain.
that. I agree with you on that. I was
Because-
excited about that.
I didn't
And-
even recognize that reveal. I didn't know who that is.
Oh my gosh, because so again, like I don't know how to talk because I don't even want to spoil the trailer because it's so exciting if you're a big Next Generation fan when you see him.
Yeah.
Because he was a villain in a couple of episodes and they're considered like some of the best Next Generation episodes. And
Will
he's
you
not
email me
someone-
later with who that is so I can
Yeah.
review?
he's not someone that anyone had ever talked about bringing back for this. So it was, I mean, the reveal at the end, I don't want to say you expect it, but you kind of, based on the previous 2 seasons, you can see kind of the direction the show has been going with that actor. So this other reveal is the one I got excited about, but also seeing the original cast, which is not a spoiler, right? Seeing Worf in there, seeing LaForge, seeing all those guys that we've been fans of for years.
So if I were to guess, because I haven't seen the trailer, if I were to guess, I would suggest that the villains are, I don't know, based on previous episodes, an evil android and someone related to the guest that we had on earlier today.
Excellent.
You are correct, at least partly.
Yeah,
Totally
you're correct. You're correct on both of them. Yeah.
Well, the very best original Star Trek movie, for me anyways, was based on a previous villain.
Mhm.
So it's why not export the idea?
The big question is, will we see Wesley Crusher again in this this season?
Wesley's God. Why would you see him again?
It's
To be
a
clear,
legitimate question.
Mike's favorite character, Wesley Crusher. The problem is the actor behind Wesley Crusher is not an actor anymore. He's a talk show host.
I don't have a
And-
problem with Wesley Crusher.
Yeah. Well, if you saw the acting ability in the previous season, I don't think anyone wants him to come back.
I did
not a-
see it.
He's not an actor anymore. He's a talk show host, and it showed in that scene. So I'd prefer non-actors staying non-actors personally. I'd like to see like a well-acted, well-told story. That last season, I don't want to say it was bad, but it was very like skippable, right? It was like
Yeah.
a 5 out of 10
Yeah,
with
that's
some
true.
really good moments, some nice callbacks here and there, but it was like a 2-hour episode that was stretched out to 8 hours or whatever it was.
I'd agree with that. And if the trailer rings true, season 3 looks great. So moving on, I know what we were all hoping today was that Bridget's shelf in the background would now be full of books instead of empty as it was last time.
Yes.
So you've made us all happy.
Oh, you're welcome.
You have a new project. Well, not new, but this is the second year, but you had to skip last year. It's called
Compose-a-ween.
Compose-a-ween. Thank you. You want to talk about that? Because there might be some people listening that want to get in on this.
Yeah, and there's no strict rules to this thing. You can jump in whatever. But if anybody out there is familiar at all with Inktober, which is basically a prompt list for artists to draw throughout October, this is kind of like that, but for writing music. So I published a prompt list a few weeks ago, and the idea is just to post your creation on each Friday during October. Hashtag Babs Compose-a-ween 22. That way we can all follow that and hear everybody's creations. There are no prizes. There's no judgment. It is just a way for us to write and post and share, just like artists do during October. And it's about spooky music, so it's fun. There were some really great submissions this last Friday for the prompt, which was the cabin. And this coming Friday, the prompt is the ritual. So I'm excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah,
But
it's really cool.
thank you. If you probably the best place to go was Instagram, Babs the Composer. There's the whole prompt list and some things on there that people can find. And if they follow me on Instagram, they'll probably the best way to follow along with that. And then follow the hashtag Babs Compose-a-ween 22. And hopefully you contribute some stuff too. Can write any length for any instrumentation that like no rules. Just
How
keep
long
things
is this
appropriate.
going on? All week? I mean,
Just
all month?
October. Yeah, just October.
I'm gonna try to get you some. So
Fun. You gonna write something?
yeah,
Sweet.
hopefully.
Everybody, you heard it here. Mike's gonna make some music. I'm excited.
Yeah. We've heard it all before.
Hey, it can be 15
Wow.
seconds. It could be
Thank
30
you.
seconds. You just come up with a
Really
little
appreciate
melody.
that. I
I'll
want
give
to
$1 to anybody who can tell me what movie that's from.
I heard
John
it all
Cusack
before.
movie?
About 1 million movies.
tell it to the Marines.
If I told you it was the guy's name was Casanova Frankenstein.
Oh my God, I love that movie. Mystery Man. Yeah, when he's climbing the wall. Yeah.
Rage taking
God
over.
damn it, Pete. Now I have to watch that movie again tonight. Damn you, sir.
Wait,
That is in another era. More people would know about this movie. And I think we should all devote the rest of our lives to making sure that people know about this film, Mystery Men. Was it 1990? There was a lot of fucking great movies in 1999. You ever notice that?
Mm-hmm. It was a lawless land.
Yeah.
it was the drugs.
It was the fear that everything was gonna fall apart, so they better get the movie out. I want to congratulate our friend, Patreon, and author Jeremiah Dillon Cook. He has a story in a recent episode of No Sleep Podcast season 18, episode 4. I believe this is free to listen to. It also says buy full episode 199, but I think Jeremiah told me that you could listen to his in here, and it's called The Abyss Within. Congratulations to Jeremiah for getting a story on the No Sleep podcast, and everybody check that out. I will include a link, as always, in the show notes. So if you are a gamer, there's a new Humble Bundle, and I will link to this too. The new Humble Bundle contains 400 hours of the best RPGs ever made
Is it
for
a humble bundle or a humble bumble?
bundle made for
Humble
20.
Bumble, Tom Bombadillo.
Yeah, the money goes to charity. Made for $20, and games like well, where'd they put the gate?
Baldur's
Baldur's
Gate.
Gate, yeah.
Yeah.
Planetscape,
Planescape Torment. It's a
Planetscape Torment, yes. Neverwinter Nights, Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. They're all in their modernized enhanced edition form except Pathfinder, since that only came out last year. But I posted about this on Twitter, and 400 hours, and Laird replied with closer to 500. And the article's like, if you have nothing to do with the rest of your life, go ahead and get this, so so I want to make people aware of that. You guys remember the Robert McCammon book collection, Blue World? It's a classic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
You can get on Kindle now.
It's on Kindle Unlimited, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I used to have a physical copy and it's gone. And I saw it there and picked it up.
I accidentally have 2 physical copies, but that's okay. But it's on Kindle Unlimited. If you haven't read this book, the stories in this book are they're simply amazing. Guillermo del Toro actually said something about it sometime a few years back. The story Something Passed By, remember that one, Mike DeBronzo?
I
is
remember
worth it.
Nightcrawlers, but
Yeah. The story Something Passed By is worth it, just for the is worth the Kindle Unlimited price alone, and more. But every story in there is great, so you really should check that out. All right, I have a question from a listener. I'm not sure if we can answer it, but we'll just really briefly try. Good morning, Mike. I hope this finds you and yours in good health. I do have a question for you. Are you aware of a phonic breakdown of Lovecraftian creatures and places? I fear that I, as well as many others, truly butcher these words in trying to read them. Thanks for any help that you may be able to provide. Michael Hardy. The first thing is, I'm not knowledgeable about things like this, like, say Pete, Rick, Matt are, and maybe several others of you, but it's not something, I'm trying to say this the nice way, it's not something that I care about. I think it's just, I care about reading the stories. But I don't know, maybe there is a phonic breakdown somewhere for
Okay,
those
so
who are interested.
I reference back to an old Peanuts cartoon where Linus was reading the Brothers Karamazov and was saying, yeah, whenever I come to a Russian name, I can't pronounce it, just bleep right through it. I mean, all of these names are not supposed to be pronounceable by human tongues.
Right, exactly the
Whatever
point.
you say works. Like DeBronzo has come up with a very interesting pronunciation for Cthulhu.
Kyle?
No, I'm sorry, DeBronzo. DeBronzo's come.
Smith.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's called
Smith.
Smith.
I thought it's, okay, yeah.
They
Smith.
call
So-
it Smith.
And so Rick says Ithaquah, I say Ithaqua.
Rick is right.
Rick,
Rick is right.
Well, there's no authoritative.
That's right.
No,
Um,
nobody even on here can agree.
I'm famous for saying Finaglai Maglanaf Cthulhu Relai when I go Fatanga. But the authority on this, the guy who I think has done the best job on this is John Brunner, who wrote a story called The Pronounced Effect, in which a young
Phonetics.
phoneticist- what's that?
Phonetics.
Yeah, a young phonetics professor goes to a conference with her radical new interpretation of how to say things and accidentally summons monsters.
Let that be a warning to
She's-
all of you listening.
She's the one who's gotten it right. Everybody else is wrong.
I love it.
But
That's why no one can know the true pronunciation.
They're
yes,
supposed to be unpronounceable by human tongues.
or yes. Ours are
This-
just a close
Yeah.
approximation. And
It-
go ahead.
DeBronzo?
I was just gonna say, isn't there a Night Gallery episode where it's a real brief snippet and there's like a professor trying to write them on the board?
Professor Peabody's last lecture.
That's it. Okay.
Carl
It's just-
Reiner playing Professor Peabody.
Yes, Carl.
Yeah, I haven't,
you
I haven't
would
seen
think,
it in ages, but
yeah, you would think that of all the, Carl Reiner came to a book signing once, and I got his book signed. And what I should have gotten signed was like my Arkham House edition of the Call of Cthulhu, just for like that, because
nice.
he's got a little. It's like if you see Dean Stockwell, you should get him to sign the Dunwich Horror.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I
Um,
mean, if you see Dean Stockwell, you should call like Ghostbusters
Yeah.
or something, because he passed
Yeah.
away last year, unfortunately. But
I know, but
I get your point.
yeah. I was at a convention once with Tony Todd, and he was sitting next to me, and I handed him my copy of 84 Charing Cross Lane. And he's like, "You really want me to sign this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Because he's actually in the movie for like 5 seconds. It's his first film.
That's great.
He is the one that tells Anne Bancroft that her building has asbestos and is being torn down.
That's
Now,
pretty cool. I bet he liked that.
yeah, and what he didn't know is that Max Brooks, who was like 2 tables down, was her son.
That's right.
So I put them together, and they're like, "You knew my mom," and you're like, "Yeah, your mom gave me acting tips." So yeah, it's kind of fun. And then he stole my pen. But-
What do you expect from Candyman? Jinx.
Anyway.
Speaking of Kindle Unlimited, and well, let me back up. Ian Rogers put out a book about 10 years ago called Every House is Haunted, and it's very hard to find that edition, but they're republishing it. It comes out on October 21st. There's a Kindle edition and a paperback edition, and right now it's only 99 cents to buy the Kindle edition, to pre-order the Kindle edition. Believe me, folks, you want this. So if you're a Kindle person, plunk down the 99 cents. You're going to be glad that you did. Ian sent me one of the older ones, which I'll always be grateful for, and signed it. And it's a great collection. Reading from Amazon, it says includes The House on Ashley Avenue, currently in development as a Netflix feature film. Sam Raimi is doing that, I think, or doing something with Ian, a film. There are haunted places in the world, all existing in reality. What was that? And every bit as tangible and accessible as the house next door.
You're
Oh my-
echoing.
You're possessed.
Sometimes it is the house next door. So check that out. Anything else, guys? Do you guys been watching Interview with a Vampire?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I
I want
want
to
to see
though.
it though. Yeah.
I've seen the first 3 episodes. I guess I'm reserving judgment for now. I mean, it's beautifully made.
Hmm.
It's beautifully made.
Is it not grabbing you yet? Or is it like why are you on the
It's-
fence about it?
I would say the slow pace of, they do change details and they're adapting it differently. And I think that how they do it is brilliant. Louis is a African-American gentleman. There's a lot to say there in a series. The third one was the most shocking with what he did. And he's the guy who originally interviewed him in 1973, Daniel. He's invited him to interview him again 50 years later and get a more quote nuanced version of what really happened. So it is definitely worth a watch. Your mileage might vary. It may turn out brilliant. I'm just reserving judgment a bit, but I don't have any problem with the story or the material or the things that they've changed or adapted. I love it. So
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a chance.
I'm not entirely sold on the guy playing Lestat, but maybe Tom Cruise is just, you can't, it's just too hard to compare another Lestat to him. So I don't know. Anyway,
It's amazing that you say that now because Anne Rice didn't want him to miss that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But she changed her mind. All right. Put out
Full page
newspaper advertisements about it, editorials and everything. So
Did she have to change a heart or her bank
Mhm.
account got way bigger?
I think she legitimately, probably both, but I think she legitimately had to change a heart.
He wasn't Rutger Hauer. Right? That was her big thing, right? Because that's who
She
she had
wanted
envisioned.
him, yeah.
That's even when she wrote the book, I think that's who she envisioned, correct?
There's actually a scene in a later book where one vampire says to somebody else, their Blade Runner is playing on TV, and he goes, "There's your Lestat right there," and everything, so it was pretty obvious. I've got a couple new sponsors, temporary, as long as their Kickstarters are going on, and I want to continue. I appreciate it because, as Sherlock Holmes said in the Priory School, I am a poor man. Lore is one of them. It's got 9 days left. It's well, I'll post the link. We are a freshly exhumed CCG, TCG based, I don't know what that means, in a Lovecraftian universe where the great old ones have awoken and humanity is in a desperate fight for survival. Won't read it all. I'll let you do that. They're over their goals, so people are excited about this. But if you want to get in on the swag and the early stuff, then do that. The other one is Brian Moore is doing a second Lovecraft movie, Pickman's Model, and it looks like he's got a lot of talent on board. Rue Moore just did an article, makeup effects veteran Howard Berger joins Lovecraft feature Pickman's Model. So
He was in K&B with Nicotero and Can't remember the other one at the moment.
So, it looks like it's going to be good. And, I've always tried to really do right by anyone who sponsors me. I don't take money from people who, I don't believe in their project, and this looks good. And so does the lore game. So, check it out, not just because they're interesting, but it supports the show. If you're going to check it out or pledge to it, it just makes me look good to my sponsors. So, there it is. I hate talking about money, but we all have to, right? We all need money. Did you guys see there's a Penguin spinoff? The Penguin from the Batman. It's going to be a TV series.
No, they're talking about that a long time ago.
Well,
The only spin-off still in production.
And everything else got the axe.
well, this is 2 days ago. The Penguin, The Hunt filmmaker. Craig Zobel directing HBO Max spinoff series. I don't know how sold I am in a series about Cobblepot, but there it is.
Are you looking forward to Black Adam?
I am. And he did a little like 30-second Instagram or whatever. And he goes, I've seen the movie twice. It's great. I can't wait for you guys to see it. And I'll just say that Black Adam is amazing. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And he goes, and he is the most powerful force. And he's like hesitates, like he doesn't want to say something on this planet. I will say that he's the most powerful force on this planet, so he's seems to be strongly alluding that Superman shows up, which
to be
I
clear,
really hope is the case.
Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, has been talking about, so one, he got cast to play Black Adam, I think before the DCEU even existed, right? This is like when Ryan Reynolds got cast as Deadpool and then held on to that casting for 12 years.
Yeah.
He got cast forever ago. And ever since Man of Steel came out, he's been talking about he has to do a movie with Henry Cavill as Superman. And he's been the chief person kind of on social media and stuff. Because interviewers ask him like, oh, do you think Henry Cavill's going to come back? And he's like, oh, I hope so. Or, oh, we've been trying to get him to do it.
Well, he's got a lot of power too.
So hopefully he does it. I just have so little faith in Warner Brothers right now, pulling off anything, let alone a Superman movie.
But I am excited to see Dr. Fate on screen. I'm excited to see Hawkman on screen.
Yeah.
So
We'll
yeah,
see.
I am looking forward to it, Rick.
Did you see the comments from Alan Moore about fans of superhero films?
I
Enlighten us.
probably don't care, but
so
go
I
ahead.
will send you the article. So he said that if you have an infantile obsession with Batman and superhero films, that it's a precursor to fascism, and basically blames Donald Trump's rise on them. Yeah.
That's some twisted logic.
It's Alan Moore. I mean, this is a
Some
guy
weird
that, like,
leaps.
but like,
Isn't this the
everyone
guy who
has-
came up with Watchmen? I mean, what the hell?
yeah, but he considers Watchmen like not a parody, like a satire of the genre now. Like
because he's the one who says it, because he's the one who wrote it. He can
It's-
say this, and of course he's right.
Well, it is a story, and it's a damn good graphic novel, and a damn good movie, in my view.
But here's the thing so he's held up to this really high standard because of Watchmen and The Killing Joke and some other things. Alan Moore has actually written a lot of really disturbing, questionable stuff, including recently, especially featuring Lovecraft. And I mean, I'll just leave it at this because we've talked about it before. Like, go count how many stories he has that don't just include rape in the background, but have a graphic depiction of rape in them, right?
Yeah. I think it boils down to, I don't give a flying fuck what Alan thinks about my infantile interest in Batman.
But you
Or
care about what
anybody
we
else.
think about your infantile interest.
I
in-
know, and I value your opinion, Matt.
And also to make a point, during the Trump era, you had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on Marvel TV, and you had a ton of things on Warner, on whatever that DC channel was. I saw so many allusions to Trump in the villains.
Oh,
and it
sure.
was full of anti-Trump political commentary.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was a very strange 4 years. I don't want to get
Mhm.
political, but that's all I'll say.
But to say that, I mean, comic book TV shows went out of the way to criticize Trump.
Speaking to the audience, have you ever experienced anything that was possibly supernatural, creepy, scary? Yes, you have, Pete. You told me about it. It involves a certain bridge. So every year, Jeff Thomas and Scott Thomas and I do a Halloween show. And I thought last year was our best yet. I decided, instead of quoting like Poe and things like that, I quoted a lot of Robert Frost poems, which he's a much darker poet than I think maybe the average person thinks. And it went over really well. What we're gonna do this time is, all of you guys are welcome as well. To those listening out there, and I've already got a few, if you've had a paranormal or even possibly paranormal / supernatural experience in your life, or even just something, hey, maybe I don't want to call this paranormal, but it's weird, I can't explain it, or it's creepy or scary as hell or whatever, I would like to read these on the Halloween show, along with chatting with the Thomas brothers and all of you guys. The Thomas brothers have a lot of stories, but they've told them on previous years. So email me, lovecraftezine@gmail.com. That's Lovecraft EZINE @gmail.com. Just understand, if you email me, I am going to read these on the show, and or maybe we'll share the load and do that. But if you don't want your last name mentioned, just sign it like your name's John Smith, just sign it like John S. or whatever. It's totally up to you. Or if you don't care, that's fine too. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be Sunday, October the 30th at the regular podcast time. So 6 p.m. Eastern. So happy October, everybody. You guys having a good October?
I am.
Yeah.
You can feel the energy in the room.
You guys are really exciting me with this. Wow.
Okay, so I sat down with my whole family, all my kids, and we watched Chucky last night, the first Child's Play.
Nice.
And they got really into it, and now they want to watch all. They asked me, "Are there any sequels?" And I said, "No."
Mm.
Are there
Some
any
of the
sequels?
sequels are good. Some of the sequels are good.
Yeah, I know.
And the
The TV
series
show's
is
good.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can skip like 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just watch movies 6 and 7, and then the TV series will be fine.
You guys are never gonna, talk me into watching a Chucky movie. Sorry. No, what you
Actually,
That's
should
great.
No, what you should be
haven't-
doing is reading Ray Bradbury, Something Wicked This Week Comes, reading Charles Grant books. But that's a personal judgment. So
Actually, for me, for fall, I'm just enjoying the weather around here and the slow turn of the colors, which is sort of different than it is in places with all those massive deciduous trees all over the place. And it's just
rubbing in.
turning gold and red, and the sky's been really blue. Air's been crisp. It's just really been nice driving to work, just seeing the different farms, all the golden bean fields and cornfields getting harvested. So, and then we're gonna make chili and have apple pies and stuff.
Well, Matt, I miss Iowa. You're in Illinois.
Right.
So I'm really glad you're enjoying all this, and thank you for rubbing it in.
I'd be happy to.
I see that several of you made chili, and
Mhm.
nobody brought me any. So
You're in Texas. You have your own chili.
all I hear is excuses.
I'll send you a
Actually,
can of-
Danielle
I'll
makes
send
a
you can of
really,
Cincinnati
really
chili.
good chili with no beans. Chili should not have beans in it.
That's a Texas thing for sure. I make
Yeah.
chili with beans.
I'm sure it's wonderful. So, how long do you think it would last if you packaged it and mailed it to me?
Ugh.
Oh.
Yeah.
That
Probably
is
not.
so gross.
All right, you guys, I love you guys. Thank you for being here every week. Next week we got Nick Bodick. If you're ever not sure who's coming up next, just go to Lovecraft Easing and click on podcasts at the top left and scroll down. Matt, you have a prize.
Yes, send an email to easyandpriceless@gmail.com, put Wonderland in the subject heading, and you could potentially win this great new graphic novel. It's substantial.
Yeah, it's a nice book. 2 weeks from now, we are going to be talking to Ian Rogers about Every House is Haunted, about his collaboration with Sam Raimi and more. And then the week after that is the Halloween podcast. You guys all planning on that? I know you
Yes.
really look
Yeah.
forward to it every year, Matt. Especially.
I watch it every year. pretty much.
I think
Yep.
it's a great tradition.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm sure as soon as I try to sign in, you'll just keep me out like usual. I'll still watch.
Well, you can still be a fan, yeah, even if I kick you out. So, all right, thanks everybody. Everyone, thanks for watching. A special thanks to my Patreons. I truly appreciate it. If you guys went away, all of this would go away, and that's just full stop. That's the long and the short of it. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to everyone who watches and listens, and for all the nice comments and everything. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. And